25 years ago, it was 1997. The internet was young, CDs were king, and computers looked like this. It's crazy just how much the world has changed in such a short period of time. Now we have insanely advanced devices at our fingertips, like wireless earbuds, Face ID, and 3D printers. It makes you wonder what our present world will look like in just 25 more years, and what newfangled technology will take over the market. But what about the things we have now? As we all probably learned from our unit on them, newspapers are essentially a dying industry. Since the birth of television and internet media, newspaper sales have declined and companies have shut down left and right. Most of the younger crowd today views them as old and obsolete, but it wasn't always this way.
America's first ever newspaper, Public Occurrences, was published in 1690 and everything grew from there. These early papers were only one page and they mainly contained announcements of ship arrivals and departures as well as old news from Europe. For over 300 years, newspapers were the only mass information medium available, meaning they were the only way for the masses to get the same news at the same time. The only competition existed between the different newspapers themselves. Between 1690 and 1920, the newspaper industry hit many different milestones. In 1721, James Franklin published the New England Courant, which was the first newspaper to appear without the crown's published by authority sanction. In 1831, William Lloyd Garrison started to publish a weekly abolitionist paper known as The Liberator. This paper was one of the first to use alternative press. Garrison used his paper to speak out against slavery and advocate for human rights, something that went against mainstream beliefs at the time. Later on, many newspapers began to follow the popular trend of yellow journalism. Our textbook defines yellow journalism as a term that is still used to describe highly emotional, exaggerated, or inaccurate reporting that emphasizes crime, sex, and violence. I think it is safe to say that yellow journalism still has an impact on the news we receive to this day. The point of all this information is that newspapers have had a massive role in the history of news and how people receive it. I know this may sound shocking, but there was a time when newspapers were a booming business and the primary way to circulate information. For over 300 years, newspapers carried this burden alone. So what happened? What was the cause of their decline?
Newspapers have been a staple of news in the United States since 1784, but in the last 2 decades, we have seen a big shift. With the introduction of online news articles and online news journals, newspapers have suffered, and many of the companies were either forced to change or put out of business. Looking at data on news consumption, Americans now overwhelmingly prefer their news to be digital. In a recent Pew survey on news consumption across all platforms, 65% of respondents said they rarely or never get their news from print. In 2020, the circulation of weekday newspapers was 24.3 million, and for Sunday newspapers, it was 25.8 million, both a year-over-year decline of 6%. In contrast, in 1990, the weekday newspaper circulation was 63.2 million, and for Sunday newspapers, 62.6. Overall, the industry continues to shrink, with Editor and Publishers Data Book listing 126 fewer daily newspapers in 2014 than in 2004.
With this in mind, what do we think newspapers will look like in 25 years' time? Well, one thing is for certain: no paper. There may be some special editions here or there, but mainstream manufacturing of printed newspapers will probably be halted entirely. However, assuming the internet resembles what it does now, we think online editions will still be published. If access is free, there will be ads for sure, both typical display ads and possibly even pop-up video ads as seen on YouTube and other websites. Paid subscriptions, such as those currently used by the New York Times, Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal, may become more widespread and normalized as well. But there's no way that's the end of it. Whatever new technology comes their way, we believe that newspapers will adapt and try their best to make themselves more marketable to the younger generations. If you've been keeping up with recent news, you may have heard about Elon Musk's Neuralink brain chip. His goal is to essentially interface the human consciousness with machines, and despite how crazy that sounds, it's currently in the works.
One of the things the Neuralinks allow Pager to do is to play his favourite video game, Pong. To control his paddle on the right side of the screen, Pager simply thinks about moving his hand up or down.
According to an article from Fortune, Neuralink is dedicated to developing a device that, once implanted in the human brain, would allow a computer to translate a person's thoughts into action. essentially allowing the mind to perform the tasks currently done by your mouse and keyboard. Musk says that this would allow information to be directly beamed from the computer back into the brain, meaning you could get all of your future news without even having to lift a finger. Long gone will be the days of flipping through yellowed pages or surfing the web by hand. In 25 years, the newest article will only be one thought away.